This week on the Destination Angler.
When those steelhead take a swung fly, there's not much else that compares to it. It's pretty violent. They like to try to rip that rod out of your hand, and you're in your back and pretty quick. That strike, when those fish hit that fly and they snap that loop of line that you've got in your hand closed, it'll wake you up.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning in. We have some great shows coming your way on the Destination Angler, the Gunnison River in Colorado, the Kootenai River in Montana, and next week, the Pere-Marquette River in Michigan. The PM, as it's known, is not only an outstanding trout stream, it's also a world-class king and coho fishery. And if you like chasing big browns and rainbows, and I'm talking big, check out last week's episode on the Bow River in Alberta. These guides only get excited about fish over 20 inches. And please give us a share, like, and follow on Instagram or Facebook, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And today, our show is brought to you by Fly Dreamers, the platform connecting the fly fishing travel industry. And today, our destination is the Salmon River in upstate New York. And our guest is Les Resseguie, expert fly angler and biologist for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC for short. Manages a trophy fishery. The Salmon River is a top destination for anglers the world over pursuing, you guessed it, salmon and steelhead. And for good reason. This river has produced not one, but two world records. The Great Lakes record Chinook salmon at 47 pounds, 13 ounces, and the world record Coho salmon at 33 pounds, 4 ounces. And it continues to provide opportunities for anglers to tie into trophy fish. Les grew up just outside of Syracuse and holds a degree in environmental, forest biology, fisheries, and aquatic sciences from State University of New York. He's done cold water research for Cornell University and has worked as a creel agent in the Adirondacks for DEC and as a fish culturalist at the Salmon River Fish Hatchery, also for DEC. A self-described fish geek, Les has pursued his passion for salmon and steelhead not only in New York State, but up and down the Washington and Oregon coast. And he's also a fishing guide. And lucky for us, Les is here to tell us about the world-class fishing opportunities in upstate New York. Les, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, I got to ask you, so when were those world records taken? That's pretty amazing.
Oh boy, those are they're a few years back. I don't have the exact dates on me, but certainly they are. They're nothing to tout it against. They're pretty impressive fish. We've got the replicas of the mounts at the Salmon River Fish Hatchery. So if you ever can come on down and check out the hatchery and the river and everything, you can see those fish right up on the wall. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's amazing. I did see the Coho record was from 1989, but I couldn't find the King salmon record. But yeah, those are big fish, man.
Oh, King record was 1991. 1991.
Okay, not too long ago. All right, very good. You know, so I've read that the Salmon River, you guys have had some really great fishing. Some of the best in the last 30 years. How are river conditions today? How's it fishing?
Well, we're just wrapping up the Chinook season. Chinook and Coho they're still in the river. I'd have to say it was a pretty good year. A lot of big fish people were catching. River conditions are a little low. We kind of had, as with most of the country where we've been in a drought sort of state. So water's low, so it's pretty easy to target those fish. And but I think everybody had a pretty good year. Right now, steelhead are starting to show up. November is the time for steelhead, and they're just starting to show up into the river and starting to see pictures. And now it should be really fun.
Yeah, happy fishermen.
Yeah.
I'm curious from a biologist standpoint, what happens when these fish counts, swing? Like, how do you go from a great year to a not great year and back up again on different rivers?
Well, Salmon River is a little unique because we have a lot of natural reproduction that happens in there. So I think a lot of what you see is wild year classes coming through. Some years there's a good wild year class that hatches out, returns to the lake, and comes back. And so I think a lot of the swing you see is in some of those year classes because our stocking rates are pretty standard every year. We sort of work on a sort of an adaptive management as far as looking at predator prey base. And so we've been ramping down some of our stockings in the past few years as we're getting information back on the prey base in Lake Ontario. We can adapt to how we're managing that fishery and try to keep a balance in the lake itself and maintain a world-class fishery.
Oh, great. About how many salmon eggs are going into the river every year?
Well, Salmon River itself gets around 350,000 Chinook fingerlings every single year, and around 90,000 Cohos, 120,000 Steelhead, and we do have a small stocking of Atlantic salmon. About 80,000 Atlantic salmon get put in every year. So
that's fantastic. And do you stock different strains of Steelhead, Skamania, Washington strain? What do you put in there?
Yeah, so for many years we've stocked two different strains of Steelhead: the Chambers Creek or Washington strain Steelhead, and also our summer run Skamania Steelhead, which is a much lower number. We used to stock around 40,000. I believe that the Skamania program is waning out. The fish aren't really performing as well as they used to. So I believe we've got some changes coming forth in our Steelhead stocking.
Yeah, interesting. And you guys just completed a plan for the fishery, right? That's up on the DEC website?
Correct. So yeah, in 2018, the Region 7 fisheries staff have completed the fisheries management plan for Salmon River. And you can find that on our website if you were to navigate through fishing and then places to fish. You'll find the Salmon River, and you'll find a lot of information regarding the Salmon River and access. And you'll find the fisheries management plan right there on the website. And it gives readers and people really basically the grand overview of the system itself and how DEC is planning to manage this fishery moving forward. So it really lays out a nice framework of how DEC plans to manage this river.
Oh, that sounds like a great resource. So we'll get more into your background later, but I'm curious, what the heck is a creel agent and what is a fish culturalist?
Sure. So creel agent so I cut my teeth with DEC as a creel agent in the Adirondacks, working on a brook trout creel survey on a small suite of lakes where there was a study going on as far as regulation changes and how a regulation change may affect fishing and size structure of fish. So yeah, for 2 seasons, I was up and talking to brook trout anglers and asking them certain questions about what they want to see in brook trout fishing and what size is important to them, and looking at their catches and taking length and moving forward. And a fish culturalist is basically simply that. We culture fish. So I was at Salmon River. I started in 2012, and I was there for close to 6 years and raising these fish at Salmon River for stocking into Lake Ontario, from egg to fry and stocking and all of that.
Okay. So your job is to grow these fish.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was, huh? And you were telling me that you participated in the Salmon River egg collection just recently, and that went well.
Yeah, we just finished up the egg collection here for 2020 just last week. They finished taking Coho eggs, and yeah, it was a good year. All egg quotas were met. We had, with low water conditions, we were a little concerned about fish returning to the hatchery, but that wasn't the case. Plenty of fish made it to the hatchery, and production should move forward this year just fine.
Oh, that's great. And so how does that actually work? The fish are spawning and they come into the hatchery, and then you guys somehow net them and pull them out and squeeze the eggs out, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, so about 13 miles up the Salmon River is Beaver Dam Brook. Beaver Dam Brook is a tributary to the Salmon River, and so the fish come up from the lake, they turn up Beaver Dam Brook, and then they climb a fish ladder that you typically see on a lot of your West Coast streams and fish conveyance structures. These fish come up into the hatchery. At that point, these fish are scooped up with a fork truck. We use a fork truck that runs down this channel, and we lift the fish up and bring them into two pits inside the spawn house. So we pump some CO2 into the water to help slow them down so we can actually handle them.
Okay.
The fish are then lifted up and they slide onto a sorting table where then they're separated by males, females, and their readiness to spawn, whether the females are are ripe and running, eggs flow freely, or if they're hard, then they're sent back down into the ladder so they can cycle in a later day. And then salmon spawn once, and so we then euthanize these fish. So then we take the eggs from the females by incision, we cut them open, take the eggs out. We then will take 2 females worth of eggs, bring them over, and we'll put 4 males directly onto them. And that's to help ensure we have good fertilization, and it helps with genetic diversity, making sure that no certain fish is selected for. The eggs are then fertilized, a little water is added to them to start the motility and start the fertilization process. The eggs sit for a little while, and then they're rinsed. And once they're rinsed, then they go into a bucket with that has some thiamine in it, vitamin B1. The salmonids in Lake Ontario are plagued by a thiamine deficiency. So it all comes from diet. So as these fish are eating alewives, which is the main prey base in Lake Ontario, alewives contain an enzyme called thiaminase. What that does is that prevents the uptake of thiamine, vitamin B1. Everything needs thiamine to grow and reproduce. So with that thiamine deficiency, without a little boost of thiamine, we'll see what in the hatchery what's called early mortality syndrome, or EMS. And so giving these eggs that little bath of thiamine, it helps negate that deficiency that these eggs have when they're coming in from the wild. And it's really quite successful. And EMS is basically, we don't see that in the hatchery system now.
That's really neat. And it amazes me that you actually scoop these fish up with, did you say a dump truck? Front end loader?
A fork truck.
A fork truck, okay.
Yeah, so if you wanted to get a pretty good view of what happens at Salmon River during the spawn, you should check out our social media. We just had one of our environmental educators, Betsy Eucharitis. She did a Facebook Live session just last week during the spawning of these fish at the hatchery, and she gives a really good description of how it's done, why we're doing that type of stuff, and you get a really good visual of the whole practice. So check us out on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff.
Well, we'll put a link on our Destination Angler podcast page website so people can see that. Fly Dreamers is the platform connecting the fly fishing travel industry. With Fly Dreamers, guides, lodge owners, and outfitters can organize their business and connect with travel agents in real time, and anglers can search and book top fly fishing destinations around the world. There's also a super cool fly angling community where anglers can post and read fishing reports on their favorite destinations. So head on over to flydreamers.com and join the more than 100,000 anglers around the world who trust Fly Dreamers for their fishing adventures. All right, so let's just jump right into it. So what makes the Salmon River so special and such an amazing place for people chasing steelhead and salmon?
Well, that's it. I mean, these fish are not native to the Great Lakes. They're West Coast fish. So we have something over here in the Great Lakes that's not like anything else in the world. You know, as you said in my intro, I fished in Oregon and Washington for a few years, and if you were to catch a fish or two a month, you're pretty excited about it.
Really?
Here, guys are,
wow.
Or at least I was pretty excited about it. There's probably better fishermen out there than me, but it was a tough fishery. Here in the Great Lakes, we're a little bit spoiled. Guys can have double-digit days on steelhead without a problem. So we have a big run of fish in some smaller water than what you see out in the West Coast, and it's pretty unique.
Yeah, that's great. So it's really managed as a trophy fishery, isn't it?
It really is. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so give us a kind of an overview, like the geography of the Salmon River. Like, where is it? How does its flow change as it comes down into Lake Ontario? What are the major sections? Kind of break it down for us.
Sure. So the Salmon River is just about at the midpoint on the eastern shore of Lake Ontario, between Syracuse, New York, and Watertown, New York. It's a pretty big watershed. It goes all the way up onto the Tug Hill Plateau, which is a geological feature here in New York, where created from the glaciers and everything. And so water drains from a good distance. And the Salmon River can be broken down into 3 different sections. You've got your lake run section, which is I'd say about 15 miles or so. So from the mouth of Lake Ontario up to a hydropower facility in Altmar, New York. It's called the Lighthouse Reservoir. And then you've got your middle corridor where you've got your reservoir sections. You've got the Lighthouse Reservoir, and then you have the Salmon River Reservoir. And those are managed with it gets some trout stocking in it. There's some walleye in it, some bass, all that. And then there's the headwaters that travel up onto the plateau, the Tug Hill Plateau. And that's more managed as a brook trout and rainbow trout fishery. There's a lot of smaller tributaries that come in, have wild brook trout, wild rainbow trout. There is some inland stocking that happens up there. So you sort of got three different sections.
Okay, I got you. And those headwaters areas, how far is that from like Altamont, for instance?
Well, from Altmar, you're probably talking another 8 miles, 10 miles up. If you want to break it, sort of look, it's all relatively close. Everything you could drive from the mouth of the Salmon River at Lake Ontario, and you can be up into the headwaters within, say, a 20-minute drive.
Oh, nice. So I could do some steelhead or salmon fishing in the morning and some trout fishing in the afternoon if I wanted to.
Without a problem.
That's fantastic. Well, take us through the seasons on the Salmon River. When do the different runs start, and what's that look like?
Sure. So typically we'll see some Chinooks starting to nose their way into the river around the end of August, beginning of September. And the height of the salmon run is right around that Columbus Day weekend, mid-October. That's when the bulk of the fish are in the system. And that's when the hatchery does their egg take, is typically right after Columbus Day. And then right after the salmon, we start to see the steelhead come in. So November is the beginning of the steelhead run. And steelhead will come in because they're chasing salmon eggs. They're coming in to eat salmon eggs. We'll get some brown trout coming in, same thing. And then the steelhead are in the system from November right on through till April when they spawn. And that's when the hatchery does an egg collection on steelhead as well in April. And then May and June is our drop back season, where the steelhead that post spawn, since they're a repeat spawner, they don't die after they spawn. So they'll head back to the lake to cruise around for another year and then come back to spawn the following year. So that drop back season is a pretty popular season. Those fish are on the chew. They just spawn. They're looking to get a little bit of energy as they're heading back into the lake. Now that's a really fun time to fish. That May, June time.
Yeah.
Once June hits, we actually have in the lower river, we have a pretty cool little smallmouth bass fishery. Some guys come up to fish smallmouth bass that are coming in out of the lake, getting ready to spawn. It can be a pretty popular thing for guys come fishing smallmouth bass, and that's when we also start to see some of the Atlantics that are coming in for the summertime. The Atlantics will spend the summer in the river. It's a very small number, so you're talking a pretty dedicated group of anglers that are coming to chase these fish. And, a lot of them call them unicorns, and yeah. Then we start up again in September. So summertime can be fun in the Salmon River too. There's resident brown trout, there's rainbow trout, the steelhead that have spawned, and there's the smolts and everything that are in the river. So you can do some dry fly fishing in the summertime. Really low angling effort, so you got lots of room to fish.
Yeah,
some nice dry fly work. So that's a pretty cool summer fishery too, to get away from some people and enjoy some good trout fishing.
Right. And so steelhead eat when they come in, and salmon essentially don't eat. Right? They're done eating. They're spawning, and then they're going to die. Correct?
Right. Yep. That's exactly it. So the salmon bite. I like to use the analogy when I'm talking to people about trying to get salmon to bite a fly. If I wave my hand in front of your face time after time after time again, you're going to want to punch me eventually, right? So they're really sort of an aggression-driven bite. They're an aggressive fish.
Yeah.
So when I'm fishing salmon, I like to use big, gaudy flies, something to elicit an aggression strike.
Right. And then steelhead egg patterns. We'll get more into some of the details here, but steelhead, you throwing egg patterns at them mostly?
Yeah, this time of year, November, early December. Yeah, it's egg patterns. It's egg patterns because they're in chasing salmon eggs, and so glow bugs, that type of stuff are really good. middle of the winter, back off the egg patterns, and we switch over to stone flies, that type of stuff. Some like hot bead stone flies, something a little bit more natural that they're picking at in the really, really cold temperatures. Guys are fishing steelhead in sub-zero temperatures, and that water's chilly. You don't see me out there fishing steelhead in the middle of the winter. I'm sort of a
You're not
November,
doing that,
December, and back into that drop back season. So
yeah, somebody once told me the more miserable you are, the better the steelhead fishing is.
yeah, that's exactly it. So
yeah, what are your favorite stonefly patterns for steelhead?
Boy, I just a lot of my flies are sort of personal invention. Just using some Estes and some crystal flash, put like a hot bead on the front of it, some different colors, orange, green, chartreuse, just sort of quick and dirty, nothing fully dressed. I mean, you can, if you wanted to go to the effort and throw all sorts of fully dressed stone flies, sure, that works really great. Something with some rubber legs and everything. But I typically keep it pretty simple.
Wonder if we could take some pictures of those flies and stick them out on our Instagram and Facebook pages for people to look at. What do you think?
Sure thing.
No, that'd be cool. Well, hey, back to the river itself. So how's public access?
Oh, public access, I'd say is pretty good throughout that lower section. So there's about 12 miles of public fishing rights. So those are easements that were the state purchased from landowners that basically once the public fishing rights is purchased, they are on that deed forever. So their access to the river, even if landowner changes hands, there's still public fishing rights to that river. So there's about 12 miles of PFR, and then there's a recently acquired state forest that covers the vast majority of the blocks in between the PFR. So there's really good public access. There's lots of parking lots. There's lots of trails. It's pretty easy to find a piece of water from in that lake run section to get onto these fish.
And we're talking like how many miles of public access?
Yeah, so there is, the lower part of the river, the first 2 or 3 miles, there is a section of river that is privately owned, both banks, and so it's kind of a pay to play situation where for the price of a nice round of golf, you can get in and have access to these fish as they're first entering the rivers from the lake. It's a pretty cool area, but it's certainly not needed. There's plenty of public fishing rights and state land where you can access this river and these fish for nothing.
Yeah, right. And so in terms of maybe getting away from the crowds during like peak salmon season, is that DSR area, is that a good place to go?
Yeah, it can be, because they limit the number of fishermen that are in there each day. So there's a lot of space. There are a couple other areas to beat the crowds. There's 2 sections that sort of bookend the either side of the Salmon River Fish Hatchery. They're fly fishing only sections.
Okay.
And so that sort of limits the anglers that can be in there to just solely fly fishermen that are using traditional fly rod, line, flies, all that stuff. So, and they're catch and release only. So you'll see some lower pressure in there too. Another big thing is humans, we're kind of lazy, A lot of these guys fish right there where they park their trucks. I recommend people to get to your parking area and take a walk for 5 minutes. And there's so much access that you'll be able to find a slice of water that you have to yourself. So,
oh, nice.
Columbus Day weekend is the heaviest weekend on the Salmon River. A lot of guys are coming in because that's the bulk of the fish are here, bulk of the salmon are here at that time of the year. So typically, personally, I don't really fish that Columbus Day weekend.
Yeah.
I like to fish now. The salmon is sort of petering out, and we're getting into steelhead. We're getting to those active feeders. The crowds are down, and it's a pretty good time of year to be on the river.
That's great. What kind of behavior have you seen, like good etiquette behavior? And are there some things you've seen people do that are just not cool that you should definitely not be doing?
Yeah, there's, a lot of that really peak of the salmon run. The fishing etiquette is a very difficult thing. We got a lot of guys that want to get on these fish. People can be a little boisterous. We're all sportsmen. We should treat these fish with the respect that they deserve. And in the end of it, we're fishing. We're enjoying the outside. We're enjoying
Right.
nature. We're supposed to be enjoying these fish. So, do the best you can. It can be difficult at times. You can deal with some tough people, but just keep a good head on your shoulders and take a walk. Find yourself a nice little piece of water. There's plenty of water to fish on the Salmon River that you can find yourself a little slice of heaven.
So like if I'm going to slip in between two guys, I don't know, say there's a guy 30 yards up and 30 yards down from me, is that too tight? Should I ask permission? What do you typically do?
I do. Hey, we're all, like I said, we're all sports out there. I'd say, hey, how's the fishing today? You guys mind if I slip in here? You got another angler?
Yeah.
If they say no, you move on. If they say sure, go ahead, then go ahead.
Okay.
This last week, I was out fishing with my buddy, and we had a really nice spot, and a father and son came down, and we were headed out. We could only fish till like 10 o'clock or so, and I just sort of quietly, said to the guys he's walking by, I'm like, hey, man, we're about to head out of here before these other guys that are above us slide down into the hole. Why don't you and your son get in here and fish this little seam? And
Nice.
boy, his face lit right up, and I hope they caught fish.
Did he know he was talking to the state biologist?
No, certainly not.
Just a nice guy out in the water.
That's it. We're, beautiful area. It's a beautiful fish, and we're all out there. We should all be out there to enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Okay, so what happens if I get a hookup and there's, guys kind of lined up above and below me and this fish takes off? Should those guys reel in?
Yeah, that's pretty good etiquette to have. Typically you'll hear the fish on, guys coming down, coming up, and you should pick your line up, and just stand there. And typically what I'll do is I'll just get all my line in and I'll just stand and wait. And if the guy's playing himself down towards me, I'll just sort of kneel down and let his fly line go over the top of my head, and just so he can play himself through the pool. So I'm not scrambling to get out of the hole or anything like that to potentially mess him up. I'll just kneel down, let him play by, and ask him, hey, man, you want a hand? You want a hand landing that fish? And set your stuff down, help him land it, and
get a net out.
Yeah,
When a fish goes ripping through a hole like that, I mean, does it put all the other fish down for a while?
Oh, no, I think it can go both ways. It can stir them up a little bit. It can get some fish moving around, and sometimes I think it can be to your advantage. If a drift boat comes down, sometimes it gets those fish that are just sort of hanging in the tail. I would get them up moving around a little bit and get some fresh fish in front of you or something like that. So I never really worry about guys that hook up and come down through my hole, or if a drift boat comes down through. We're all out there enjoying the same stuff.
You get a front row seat to a great fight. Sounds pretty good to me.
That's it. You're there for the show.
That's great. And there's some other streams nearby too, right? That maybe aren't stocked, but still have some spawning fish. Is that right?
Sure thing. So to the north, there's the Sandy. There's North and South Sandy, Little Sandy. To the south, there's Grindstone Creek that do get some steelhead plantings. They do get some Chinook plantings. Again, a lot of public fishing rights on those streams. And when there's water in them, they certainly have a lot of fish. So that's another good thing too. If you're getting overwhelmed on the Salmon River, so there's a lot of opportunities right within easy driving distance to find some more water to fish. So, and all that information you can find on our website too, under places to fish.
Okay.
There's the public fishing rights maps where we have, good maps for the public to view and sort of plan out their trips, and shows where the parking areas are, where the public fishing rights are. And so there's a lot of good resources on our website in that places to fish section.
Cool. Well, let me ask you, do you have a story for us and maybe your most memorable trout or your personal best, or if salmon, I should say, salmon or steelhead?
Whew. Well, I caught a lot of salmon here on the Salmon River and a lot of steelhead. The most memorable stuff comes from getting people into their first fish. And, whether they're friends or family members. We also have a program that DEC partners with Project Healing Waters. You may be familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So every year when we can, when there's some years we've had to cancel because of bad weather or heavy flows or something like that, we have an event in November where we partner up with some veterans, some local veterans of the area. And every veteran has their own personal guide that spends the entire day with them. And we chase steelhead. And boy, let me tell you, that's my favorite fish of the year to fish with these guys. It's a way for me to be able to give back to what they gave to us. And it's a small piece, but it's something that I can do in a way to just say thanks and help these guys out, because it really means a lot to them. It really means a lot to me. It means a lot to the department. And it's a pretty cool event. So hopefully next year we'll be able to get back out there with these guys and do it again. So
sure. Can anybody sign up to help out with that?
That I don't really know how that all works out. It's all through the Project Healing Waters. It's their program.
Okay. Yeah. I've participated in Project Healing Waters here in Indiana, and yeah, I think you're right. You do sign up with them, and then they hook you up with a guide, with an angler for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great program. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit about you, Les. So how did you end up as a biologist with the DC in New York?
Well, it all broke down to hard work and perseverance. I started with a department in 2007 as a creel agent, doing the brook trout creel. And then once the creel was done, I was kept on as a seasonal technician, where I assisted the biologist at the time with brook trout research in the backcountry of the Adirondacks. I was there for about 4 years, working seasonally. In 2012, I took a full-time position at the Salmon River hatchery, spent my time there and just worked really hard. And in November of 2018, I accepted a position as a biologist back in Region 6, back to where I started back in 2007. And I've been there since.
Yeah, good for you. And you did an interlude out on the West Coast at some point in there too, right?
That was shortly after college. So right after college, after I graduated and got my bachelor's, I worked for Cornell University for a couple of years. And then in 2005, I followed my girlfriend. She was moving to the West Coast for a little bit of time. So I was like, yeah, sure. I followed her over there and tried to find a job out West in the environmental field. And it didn't pan out. It was it's just as competitive over there as it is here. But I did some odd jobs, did the West Coast thing, did a whole bunch of fishing, and then we sort of missed our family and everything. And we moved back in 2007, and I started with the DEC.
Okay. And then you were telling me that you did some index netting on the St. Lawrence River. What is that?
One of my big tasks and my big duties as a biologist is maintaining this long run data set of St. Lawrence River index netting. So basically we set the same sites every year. The netting started in 1977. It came up as part of an extension to the shipping season in the St. Lawrence Seaway. And it was a way to monitor fisheries trends in the river as we move forward. So it's a long running data set. It's been running since 1977, and it's an index netting. It's not a population estimate or anything like that. More is involved in that type of stuff, but it's trend data. How many bass did we catch this year? How many bass did we catch in 1990? How many bass did we catch in 1980? How many walleye? It's sort of index of abundance. We collect other data as well, age data. We were monitoring for fish health. So it's a pretty intensive week-long survey, 32 nets in a week. And we have 2 surveys, one up in the upper reaches around the Thousand Islands area, and then one down in Lake St. Lawrence by the Moses Saunders Dam. Okay. How's the St. Lawrence doing as a fishery? Well, the Bassmaster Elite Tournament was just here in Clayton, New York this year. So BASS with St. Lawrence is the top bass destination in the nation. So I'd say it's doing pretty good. Oh man, good job. That's fantastic. I've never been to the Adirondacks. I'm kind of curious, how is the fishing up there? I mean, if you want to get away from people, that's where you want to go. We have a lot of backcountry Adirondack ponds where you hike into them with your small boats, your lightweight boats, your float tubes, or whatever you want to do. We have some superior brook trout in the Adirondacks. Okay. It's sweet. That's where I cut my teeth with Cornell in the Adirondacks. That's where I started my DEC journey in the Adirondacks. And it's pretty near and dear to me. And we have a family camp up in the Adirondacks that we spend much of the time in the summer up there, enjoying the quiet, enjoying some nice fishing, brook trout, lake trout.
Oh, that sounds great. Have you had I know you got a young son. Have you had a fly rod in his hands yet?
No, no, not yet. Not yet, but he's doomed. I tell you what, he's doomed.
Yeah. Now your dad, was it your dad that got you into fishing, or how did that come about for you?
Yeah, sure was. My father had me ice fishing when I was 2 years old on Oneida Lake. It's a big lake just outside of Syracuse. So I grew up fishing perch and walleye, and my dad had me into it right from the get go. And it was a bug that bit me, and this fish have been my life ever since.
Slime and scales forever, right?
Slime and scales. Yeah, my wife works in the fisheries field as well. So this kid's doomed. He's gonna be in it.
Hopefully so. It sure brings a lot of pleasure to a lot of people. Well, I'm kind of curious. This fishing thing's a family thing for you. Who or what's had the biggest influence on you personally when it comes to fishing?
I mean, it is my father. He taught me the ways and taught me how to enjoy and just enjoy what's around you. And you can bring a meal of fish home and enjoy that. You can put it in the freezer. Yeah, it's all kudos to him.
No kidding. That's great. I had same situation. I had a dad and a grandfather that got me into it early on. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and take us into the mind of a salmon and a steelhead. Like, how do these guys think? Like, how do they eat? How do the species differ? What are they looking for in terms of cover? Give us some basics on that.
Sure. So, like we mentioned before, the salmon they're coming into the river and they're spawning and they're dying. So when they hit your flies or whatever, they're really not hitting your fly to eat, to gain nutrition. It's really an aggression-driven strike.
Yeah.
Those steelhead are foraging. They're following in behind the salmon to eat those eggs. Then through the winter time, they're maintaining themselves on whatever's drifting through the river, whether it is some more eggs or it is stoneflies, that type of stuff. So, those are your active biters. We have sort of two different camps in the fly fishing world here on the Salmon River. We've got the drift fishing guys, the guys that are using egg pattern stoneflies, this and that. And we have, it's getting pretty popular, are the guys that like to swing flies. Salmon River is big enough that you can use a spey rod, 12, 13, 14-foot spey rod and swing flies for these fish. And really that's the camp that I'm starting to be into more and more. I swing a lot of flies. I just enjoy it rather than standing in one spot all day and taking cast after cast after cast. You can sort of work down through a stretch of water and try to find the active biters, the really aggressive fish. And man, when those steelhead take a swung fly, there's not much else that compares to it.
Kind of violent, I'm sure.
It's pretty violent. They like to try to rip that rod out of your hand, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So salmon and steelhead, both pretty aerial, right?
Yeah, for sure. So the Chinooks are a little more bulldoggy. They like to stay deep and run pretty hard. The Cohos certainly like to get in the air. You hook into them and they just, they're a little bit smaller than the Chinooks. Most of our Chinooks are running in that like 15 to 25 pound range. Those Cohos are down in that 8 to 15 pound range. So they're a little smaller. So they still got some weight behind them, but boy, do they like to get in the air. And then a fresh steelhead out of the lake, a dime bright chromer will, you'll know it. They'll be out of the water all the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you hook one of these guys, any of these three species you talked about, I mean, are they just pretty much peeling line off your rod?
Yep. You're in your backing pretty quick.
Wow. And a typical fight, like if I've got a 20-pound Chinook on the line, am I, taking a couple minutes to get him in, or is it more like 5 to 10? What's typical?
Oh, no, it's just, it's a couple minutes. If your gear is rated correctly, if you've got the, a heavy rod with, good heavy tippet on, and you've got a good hook, you can control those fish pretty good. I'd say within 2-3 minutes is a respectable fight on those Chinooks. The water's not super big here, not like the West Coast where fish can get down deep and everything. So you can play them out within a couple minutes, I'd say.
Okay. What weight rods do you recommend for the different types of fish?
Sure. So a lot of the steelhead, steelheaders are 7, 8 weights are pretty good. The salmon guys are running 8 to 10 weight rods. Personally,
Okay.
I run a 7/8 switch rod. So the switch rod it's a 2-handed rod. It's sort of that in between a single-handed traditional fly rod and a spey rod, where those spey rods are 12 to 14 feet. That's what my switch rod's 11 feet long. So it gives me the ability to switch between drifting flies and swinging flies. I can switch the line that's on my reel, and I can go back and forth depending on the conditions that are in front of me.
Okay, that's cool. And what about leaders?
Sure. So I build my own leaders just because of cost and everything. I grab a couple spools of fluorocarbon. I typically run like 12 pound is the main chunk, and then I'll step it down to like 10, then 8. If you're swinging flies, you can have it a little bit heavier just because they see the fly before they see the line. You're drifting flies. Sometimes in these low water conditions, people had to go down to 6 and 4 pound this year because it's so low and so clear.
Okay. And what are the flows typically this time of year?
Typically, the flows are around 335 cubic feet per second. That's the minimum base flow that is required by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. When the hydropower was relicensed, they set these minimum base flows for these fish to come, to allow them to migrate back. In a typical year where we're not in drought conditions, there's an excess of water. So we're not typically at our base flows. 700 cubic feet per second is a really nice water to fish, I'd say.
You like 700. Okay.
Yeah, 700 is pretty good. 700 to 1,000.
Okay.
You can still cross the river. You can still wade it.
Yeah. Yeah. 350, 335 sounds like a trout stream.
It is. It's pretty tough, but these fish can navigate the river, and they made it back to the hatchery this year. And people had a really good year fishing for them. So everybody won this year. We got our eggs, and the fishermen had a really enjoyable time.
Yeah. So I'm curious, back to spey casting for a minute. What's the attraction to spey casting? What advantage does that give you? Or is it just fun to do?
It's just fun to do. For me, managing like a lot of line out at one time, and it's just a different style of casting. When you're drift fishing, your rod tip is high. You're high sticking it, working it through, these runs or whatever pool you're working. So your rod's up in the air, your arm's up in the air. And that can get fatiguing for me, at least. I get a little tired of just sort of staying in the same spot, working the same piece of water. With the spey casting and swinging flies, you bomb out a big amount of line, you cast across the river, and then your rod goes to your side. You put your rod down. You can stand, you can relax, you can watch the geese fly over. You just sort of watch your line work through the section, and you just work your way down through the run. It's just a bit more relaxing for me.
Okay.
And like I said, that strike, when those fish hit that fly and they snap that loop of line that you've got in your hand closed, and it'll wake you up. It's just a lot of,
in case you were daydreaming.
Yeah. Because a lot of the times I am.
Yeah, right. Well, not when you're spey fishing, I mean, you can daydream a little bit, but don't you also have to, make sure you don't have a big, loop in your line? I mean, you want to kind of mend a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Certainly. So, you get your cast out there, you make your sort of mend and get yourself on that straight, get your line nice and straight, and you're, you sort of are adjusting. You got some sink tips on the end of the line. So you're sort of dredging through the bottom of the bucket.
Okay. Sink tip. Okay.
Yeah. You're sort of working down through a run. The spey runs are typically long pools, long tail outs, lots of water rather than some more skinny water that you'd be drift fishing in. So you got a lot more room. You can just it's just a lot more relaxing in my book. Okay.
So these fish are scooting from one pool to the next on up the river. Is that right?
Yep. And then they'll sort of hole up in the middle of the day and just hang in the tail out. And that's a good spot to swing flies for fish that are just sort of hanging in the tail out.
Okay. And like, what kind of a speed do you want that fly traveling? Are you stripping this? I mean, how are you getting those fish to strike then?
No, it's just so you cast on like a 45-degree downstream, and then that sink tip, pulls your line down in. It's sinking down, getting it in front of that fish's face, and it's just a slow meander across that stream until your line is facing straight downstream. And you never want to negate the hang down.
The hang down, yep.
The hang down is where your line's straight downstream, and then that sink tip just lets it go just a little bit further. Boy, I've caught a lot of fish just on that hang down, and a lot of times you'll pull it back too fast. So, and then it's basically just, then you strip all your excess line back in, all your running line, right back to your shooting head, and then you make your cast again, send all that line back out, hang a loop in your hand, because you want to have a little bit of line hanging down. So when that fish grabs it, that line, that loop that's in your hand will snap closed as the fish is turning its head and turning downstream. And that's when that loop snaps closed, it's just a light little lift and you're hooked up.
It sets the hook.
It sets the hook.
So you don't have to give it a big yank. Usually it's kind of like streamer fishing, it's going to hook the fish then.
That's it.
It sounds like you're really systematic when you cover these pools. You kind of start at the top and work your way down then, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. I'll stand there and I'll take 3 to 5 casts, and then you take a step downstream. Then take 3 to 5 casts and then take a step downstream, and you just work your way all the way down through the run. And then if you don't do anything at the bottom of the run, you walk back to the top, change your fly, change your sink tip, change something, and run through the run again, because maybe you were a little high and those fish were a little bit lower. Put a heavier sink tip on. Maybe they wanted a dark fly instead and you were running a light fly. Try something that you can just work. You can work these pieces of water over and over again.
Okay. Oh, that's a great tip. Okay. Versus just going to another pool, you can just give it another shot with something slightly different.
Sure thing. If you have a feeling that you've got fish in front of you, might as well just change it up, because you're looking to elicit that strike. You're looking for what they want.
Yeah. What are the fishermen who maybe aren't spey fishing? It sounded like they're doing some high sticking, nymphing. What are they doing to catch fish?
Yeah. So they're, again, if you're not catching fish, if you know that you got fish in front of you or fish are moving through you and you're not doing anything, try changing your fly, try changing the color. Sometimes you're fishing one color, you want to shock them with something else, change up to a bright chartreuse or something like that. Throw something totally crazy at them, and sometimes that'll just flip that switch in that fish's brain and have them hit it.
Like one of your own personal inventions, huh?
Yeah. Yep. Like I was saying before, some glow bugs are really popular for those drift fishermen. Estes flies, just some Estes, like with four or 5 wraps of Estes on a like a size 6 or size 8 hook.
What's Estes?
Estes is a crystal yarn, like a really flashy crystal yarn.
Crystal flash.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So, it comes in all sorts of different colors. It's, and it's pretty cheap, pretty affordable. You can make yourself a whole bunch of flies with a bunch of hooks and a couple different colors of Estes, and you can get yourself on the water pretty affordably.
Okay. And so the guys that are nymph fishing, essentially high sticking, does that work for salmon and for steelhead?
Sure does.
Okay.
I talked about the aggression-driven strike, and another thing that sort of comes into my mind when I think about it, and I don't know if it's true or not, but so these salmon, maybe there's something in there saying that, I want my eggs to survive and not your eggs to survive. So you hear guys fishing skein for salmon and steelhead and stuff like that. Guys actually fishing egg sacs and skein. And so when you're fly fishing with an egg pattern or an Estes pattern, Estes is essentially an egg pattern, but it's sort of really flashy and gaudy. Maybe it's triggering that whole, I want my eggs to survive and not your eggs to survive. And they just hit it to crush it to kill it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a way to think about it, or at least that's the way I think about it.
What is skein? What is that?
So skein is the entire, it's before the eggs loosen up into single eggs. It's that whole ovary. All the eggs are all still attached, all into the filaments and everything. And so what guys will do is they'll cure that whole piece, and then they can cut them up into pieces, and of cured skein, and then put them on like an egg loop. And a lot of the guys fish under bobbers. They fish under
Okay, you're talking about bait for bait.
Yep.
Fishermen.
Talking
Okay.
about bait.
Can you tie a fly that looks like that?
Sure thing. Sucker spawn is a pattern that has that egg mass look.
Okay.
It's a pretty simple fly to tie. And what it is it in the springtime, we get a really good run of white suckers and red horse suckers that come in out of Lake Ontario and everything. And what that fly is imitating is those sucker eggs. And the steelhead get on sucker spawn patterns pretty good in the springtime.
Okay. Same colors with those sucker spawn? Is the bright colors still?
Sure, bright colors, natural colors, like pinks and oranges. You can even go white. White is like a dead egg. White can be a really good color sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
They sometimes you'll hear the saying bright day, bright fly, dark day, dark fly.
Okay.
That's a kind of a good tip to keep in your mind, and change your flies. If you're standing in the spot and you're not doing too much, try changing a fly, change a color.
Sure.
Shock them, give them the shock treatment,
Yeah.
show them something new. Show them something new.
Are you ever sight fishing?
Oh yeah, a lot of times you can see these Chinook in front of you in the Salmon River. It's that gains a little bit of confidence. That you got fish there in front of you. But a big tip that I'll give you especially this time of year, if you see a Chinook there that's spawning, they're out in front of you. You can see them actively spawning. A lot of the times there's a steelhead right behind those Chinooks that you can't see, because they're a little bit smaller, they're colored a little bit different. They don't stand out in the water so much.
Yeah.
Run your egg pattern and make sure it just gets on behind them, because a lot of the times there's a steelhead sitting right there waiting on eggs coming out of that red.
So that's a great tip, Les. Do you get any other tips that can help anglers be more successful?
Yeah, sure. If you kind of have an idea that you got fish out in front of you or something, and there may be, a lot of times you can be sort of sight fishing to some of these fish, and if you'll visualize, you can see them that maybe they're line shy. If they're moving away from where you think your fly is, it's probably a pretty good sign that you should probably downsize some of your tippet in sort of these low water conditions that we're in this year, in particularly. Guys are having to run some pretty light line. Okay. Downsize. You're going to sort of maybe take a hit on maybe trying to land a fish, but you're going to get that hookup that you're looking for, and that's all part of the game. So read the fish. They're going to tell you. They're just going to sort of tell you what they need and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm curious. Should anglers be looking for seams and foam and things like that, like you normally do when you're fishing streams for trout?
Yeah, certainly. So when the water's nice and warm, a lot of the times these steelhead they're sort of up. They're up in that highly oxygenated water. As the water gets really cold in the middle of the winter, a lot of those fish will back off of that heavy, faster water, and they sort of hang back into the deeper pools where they don't have to work as hard to maintain themselves in that heavy flow. And another thing, you see a lot of guys standing in the river like way too deep. A lot of these fish, these steelhead and stuff, a lot of these fish they're in water that's only knee deep. There's no reason to be standing, belly button deep in the water, because if you're in that deep, you're standing where those fish want to be. So, fishing that little softer water, find the seams, the gentle water where these things like to hang. And, and again, along with the sight fishing thing, if you can see them, they can see you. A lot of times when we're stacked up, we got a lot of salmon or whatever that are in a pocket right in front of you. They can see you just as well as you can see them. So don't fish to those fish. Fish to the fish that you can't see.
Okay.
These are just big glorified trout. These steelhead and stuff, they're big glorified trout. They're just stick with your trout fishing techniques. Fish how you know how to fish, and they'll be in, as long as you're fishing in the right water, you got a nice drag-free drift. That's right where you need to be.
Yeah, that's cool. Do any of these fish ever hit a dry fly?
No, the salmon, I wouldn't fish dry flies for salmon. You do hear of a couple of guys that are trying to skate flies in the summertime. You hear that big time on the West Coast. I don't know how successful it is here on the East Coast. You don't hear many guys doing it. There might be a few. I've never done it.
Okay. Not the most productive way to get a fish on the end of the line then.
No, I don't think so. not saying that it can't happen. If you want to spend the time to do that, go for it. But I typically don't.
Okay. What are your favorite salmon patterns, fly patterns?
Well, so, like I said, I like the swing flies. Pretty popular are egg-sucking leeches, woolly buggers. My number one is what's called a prom dress. Yeah, it's pretty gaudy. It's like a 3-inch, basically tinsel fly. It's got a little bit of weight on it to help get it down a little bit, but it's pretty out there. I can share a picture with you.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I want everybody fishing with a prom dress, but
yeah, right.
I like to say you can't go to the dance party if you're not wearing a dress.
Okay, prom dress. And you tie these yourself?
I do. I like to tie that. That's pretty rewarding for me, is to catch a fish on something that I tied myself, whether it's a variation on a traditional salmon fly, or it is a traditional salmon fly. I'm not the greatest tyer in the world, but I certainly can catch fish on flies that I've tied.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you just have to get close, in terms of getting the pattern kind of right, and these fish will hit them, huh?
Yep.
Well, good. Well, boy, it's been great talking to you today, Les. And I'm curious if you could give us just a little lay of the land, like in terms of, the nearby towns. And I'm assuming there's tons of fly shops in these towns. And, where should people head?
Yeah. So Pulaski, like I said, is about half hour north of Syracuse, 25 minutes south of Watertown. And these towns like Pulaski, and then the other town is Altmar, which is the upriver town. These two towns their economy is really driven off of this fishery. So there's plenty of tackle shops, whether you're a traditional fisherman, you're a fly fisherman. There's numerous tackle shops. There's numerous hotels, restaurants, bars that a quick little Google search on Pulaski, New York there's plenty of resources out there for people to come, eat, drink, and stay. And it's a pretty neat little community.
Oh, very good. And then DEC, you have some really great resources on your website too, correct?
Yeah, I would really recommend, people that are new to the area, or even people that aren't new to the area, people that have been fishing for a long time around here, to visit our website and navigate through. It's dec.ny.gov, and you'll go to fishing and places to fish. And Salmon River has its own page, and there's a lot of useful resources on there as far as the access, the management plan that we spoke of, and then the other tributaries surrounding the Salmon River, where people can get on to fish those. And there's a lot of good resources on our website towards fishing.
Oh, that's great. Any other tips that you want to tell the audience about today?
Enjoy yourself. We've got a world-class fishery out here, and those fish deserve the respect that we can give them, and we're out there to enjoy nature, and, just don't take it so seriously. We're fishing, we're outside, we're not working.
Yeah, not bad. So Les, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, on our website, you can easily navigate to contact us, and there's a general email box. It's all lowercase fwfish@dec.ny.gov. What that does is it'll send your email in, your question, and then it'll sort of get filtered around and sent to the appropriate biologist that can answer your question. So if you have any questions, fisheries related, throughout the state, it doesn't have to just be salmon or steelhead. It can any question you have around your area, feel free to send an email to that link, and your question will get answered. I'll also recommend that we have what's called DEC Delivers. You should sign up for that too. It'll be an automatic prompt when you go to our website to sign up for DEC Delivers. It's essentially our newsletter. So anytime that there's maybe a proposed regulation change, or something's coming up for public comment, or just something generally really cool, it'll just get forwarded to your email, and you can keep up to date with what we've got going on. And and sticking with our social media. So that Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we're all on there, and it's a big part of how we're trying to reach out to the public and keep transparency and showing everything that we're doing with the department.
Well, great. Well, listen, we'll put a bunch of this information out on our show notes on our website, and pictures of Les's top fly picks on our Facebook and Instagram page. And folks, thank you for listening. And Les, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I wish you extraordinary success in your life as a biologist and all your adventures and with your family. And if you're a guide, you want to be on the show, please email me at shaig50@gmail.com. That's shaigh50@gmail.com. As always, our music is by Brothers Fountain, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.